You are on the next level. This is The Beautiful Truth on AIDSISOver.com, where the expression is still free.
20 seconds and counting. 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
And this is Fintan Dunne reporting. Thank you for joining us. You're very welcome. And also like to thank our sponsor, neemwell.com. That is your personal source for potent Indian neem. If you have never heard of Indian neem, you need to check it out. It is the most potent herb on the planet. And Kathy McMahon of neemwell.com formulates Indian neem in hypoallergenic creams and lotions. More at Neemwell. That's NEEMWELL.com. Or get more directly from Kathy, KATHY, at neemwell.com. It is a new year and we'll be focusing on trance busting. We're going to kick it off with an expert in trance busting, and that is our first guest of 2009, Dr. Michael Ellner. If we were to discuss Michael's achievements, we'd be here all night and we'd never even get to speak to him. He's standing by right now. Michael has helped thousands of people take charge of their lives and their health. Michael has been a member of the National Institutes of Health Complementary Therapies Working Group, and he has been honoured by the National Guild of Hypnotists as Educator of the Year previously, and by the National Federation of Neurolinguistic Psychologists. He's also been named as one of the world's leading experts in mind-body healing by the European Commission, who has recommended him as a university-level instructor of healing with hypnosis for physicians and healthcare professionals. Michael's also prominently involved with HEAL, HEAL, that's Health Education AIDS Liaison, an independent AIDS support group which does not follow the mainstream line on HIV and AIDS. But it's for his insights into trance, social trance and personal trance that he's joining us on the line right now. Michael, you're very welcome.
Actually, I consider it my privilege, and it is pleasurable and satisfying to have a chance to support what you have done and are doing. The wonderful contribution you made to raising very important issues about HIV, AIDS, and health in general. So I'm delighted to participate.
Okay, well, it's great to have you on board also, Michael, because I know you've been a relentless campaigner on the HIV, AIDS and other health issues and social issues for many years. And what I'd like to do is to try and take a broader sweep through this than purely through just the issue of HIV, AIDS alone. That, if you like, is just one example. Let me start, Michael, by taking you back to something that you wrote. I think it's back in about 2000. You wrote, "Just take a look at us. Everything is backwards. Everything's upside down. Doctors destroy health. Lawyers destroy justice. Universities destroy knowledge. Governments destroy freedom. The major media destroys information. And religions destroy spirituality." My God, it's so true.
I am so glad you mentioned this, because you've given me an opportunity that I've never had before.
Mm-hmm.
I have gotten considerable credit for that quote, but actually it was a collaborative effort between Tom DiFerdinando and I writing a paper for HEAL. And somehow when the quote was picked up, they picked it up with Michael Ellner. But actually, as I said, it was a collaborative effort. We came to that conclusion during weeks of trying to express a major concern we had. So thank you, Tom, for your contribution to this quote. And I think this quote has taken on a life of its own. Mm-hmm. It has shown up in publications around the world in a wide range of media and in terms of a wide range of subject matter, because people identify it. So people in each of those camps have grabbed that quote because their world is upside down.
Yeah, well, I think it's a very useful quote because it goes to the heart of it, and it's perhaps an expression of trance thinking, that we are stuck in trance. And I know that you've had, on many an occasion, when you're doing interviews, etc., trying to get through to people about the sheer depth and scale of the hole into which we're currently dug, Michael.
You know, I think you and I could make a major contribution today, so let's begin. Most people think of trance as that somebody waves a watch in front of your face, or somebody says a couple of words on a stage and if someone goes into trance. Mm-hmm. But the most common and dangerous type of hypnosis is social and cultural. And we grow up believing things. And then based on our beliefs, we create our worldview. And when something challenges our worldview, that type of hypnosis interferes with our looking at the evidence and making informed decisions. The trance, the belief, I'll give you an example. Mm-hmm. In the Americas, most children grow up believing there's this man who's kind of fat and jolly. He lives in the North Pole. He has a team of reindeer that can fly. And this man knows the secret. He knows if you're sleeping. He knows if you're awake. And he knows if you're bad or good. And if you're bad, you get a little piece of coal in your stocking. And if you're good, you get wondrous presents. Mm-hmm. Now, children hearing this story believe it literally. In the same way that children who are informed about religion believe it often literally. Mm-hmm. Years later in life, older children ridicule the younger children. You still believe in Santa Claus? Ha, ha, ha. And the group disapproval is strong enough to change that belief.
Yes.
But when you talk about medicine, the group defends the mythology because they still believe it. So it's much more challenging to question medical science than it would be to say there's no such thing as Santa Claus.
Yeah.
However, there's more evidence that there's a Santa Claus than there is that there's an HIV. There's more evidence that there's a deity than there is that there's an HPV virus, and we need a vaccine to protect young women. And what's causing the problems is that the mythology is embedded in the group. And that's our challenge. It's helping the group change its mind, creating a critical mass of people rejecting mainstream beliefs. Now, this is urgent because it's become a machine. And every day the machine is more dangerous. As I speak to you, I know I'm not telling you anything you're not aware of. Hopefully your audience will take notice and not take my word for it or your word for it, but begin to investigate. Today, the practice of conventional medicine is the most serious threat to all of our health. Now, that's not to say that emergency medicine isn't a boon to humanity. It's not to say that trauma care is saving lives. There are parts of medicine that are absolutely important to our well-being. And there are parts of medicine, the former practices of medicine, that are serious threats to our health. I consider them weapons of mass destruction.
You know, you're highlighting a lot of issues there. Let me take it back, if I can, Michael, to the personal level. And you've spoken about the horror of socialization. And that is pointing us in the direction that, in fact, this mode of thinking we have and the things that we believe are deeply ingrained, and they come with us out of our upbringing. From your personal experience, how did you encounter the horror of socialization? What effect did it have on you, and how has that informed you as you speak now today?
You know, when I was young and in school, I was one of these students who would be today labeled ADD or ADHD and put on drugs. But at that time, it wasn't viewed in that way, and what it meant was my mother was always coming to class to explain my behavior. My mother was so often in the school that people thought she worked there. But what I discovered early on was I was being force-fed information that didn't make sense. I remember being in a class and a teacher saying, no two snowflakes are alike. And this thought came out of nowhere. How the heck would anybody know? What does that mean, looking at every snowflake? And then when I asked questions about it, I was kind of told I was too smart for my own good. When I was older, when I was 19, I developed a serious liver disease. I was told with great authority I'd be dead in 18 months.
Right.
I've outlived every doctor who said that. And So there have been many, many personal experiences where I can't explain why, but I grew up in a time and an era where one was encouraged to question authority. Now we live in a world that's dominated by political correctness, and you can't question anything. Any questions you raise are hate speak, or this speak, or that speak, or politically incorrect. They have cut down the possibility of intelligent dissent. And when I say they, I mean the media. I mean the government.
And yet, Michael, it's not as if alternative viewpoints haven't been presented and are presented to people, and yet they, maybe because there's not enough of us saying, hey, you don't still believe in Santa Claus, we're in a minority, people won't break out of it. To a degree, they must be engaging in some kind of self-hypnosis process.
Yes.
What is that?
In this case, I would call it auto-hypnosis.
Mm-hmm.
And let's make that distinction so perhaps people can get a better understanding. Generally speaking, self-hypnosis is when a person is looking to hypnotize themselves intentionally. They want to make a change. They want to improve something.
Mm-hmm.
Auto-hypnosis is the kind of hypnosis that occurs and you're not even aware of it. So you say, well, maybe not enough of us want alternatives. I suspect that we don't know how many of us do. And if we did it, we'd change the world instantly. But whenever this information is presented, it's presented with a bias. So when somebody says, well, I question if AIDS is infectious, we're told it's a conspiracy theory. And immediately people disregard the information. Or we're told, this person is not an expert, he can't discuss this. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to recognize a fraud when you see it. Mm-hmm. You don't have to be a virologist to check simple facts. And part of the problem is we form our decisions based on the groupthink, and they control the groupthink. So yes, there are huge improvements in certain areas, and then everything is the same and worse in most areas. There's a group of doctors who are practicing complementary and alternative medicine, but they're doing it allopathically, and that dilutes the benefits, and then they claim it doesn't really work. And hopefully the internet and the kind of things that you're doing, which you're very skilled at in terms of taking advantage of the technologies available today, will allow people to realize that most of us agree and we're given the opinion that we must be crazy. We're isolated and alienated from the number of people who might be in tune with us, who suspect something is very wrong.
Yeah, well, that's another theme that I think that you've picked up in your work, Michael, and that is the paucity of real relationship, which is also at the heart of the problem. Maybe you could speak to that issue as well, of the desert of real relationship that we're existing in.
Well, you know, the thing about it is we're all in the same boat. I kind of think, and I'm including myself in this boat, that we're dealing with social and personal malnourishment. We're malnourished physically. We're malnourished emotionally. We're malnourished spiritually. And in these ways, that means that how we react to the world we live in is affected in a big way. So we're not paying attention. Every day we're polluting the air. I'm not talking about global warming, but I'm talking about we're polluting the seas. We're polluting the air we breathe. We're polluting the food. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, we're polluting our minds, bodies, and spirits. Animals will not do that unless they're forced to. We're kind of doing it with a flourish, and we're not paying attention. And some of the serious health challenges that we see are warning us of this. I view AIDS as a canary in a mine. It's a warning that people at the edge, the disenfranchised among our society, are getting sick, as a warning to all of us because of certain conditions that contribute to behaviors that promote getting sick instead of being healthy. So that's one example of AIDS, but it's applied to all the areas of life. My passion is helping people take the suffering out of painful conditions. And I put a lot of energy into trying to educate healthcare professionals, especially the ones on the front lines who are working with these people, because there are very effective ways to help them do that are being completely completely ignored in favor of drugging these people. And being comfortably numb makes the problem worse. It doesn't help.
Yeah, well, you're highlighting. Yeah, you're highlighting, I think, one of the problems in any therapeutic methodology is that if it just treats one isolated aspect that's manifesting, it's going to go nowhere. It's like throwing a rock into a pond. It'll just sink to the bottom. You're talking about a physical, emotional, and spiritual malnutrition. And we've got to try and address all aspects of that in order to get anywhere, rather than just one small manifesting aspect that's showing up in the individual's behavior at any time.
I'm beginning to look at my own life, and I'm beginning to realize that before I can really talk about health, I have to define it. And I'm beginning to realize that purpose and meaning play a considerable role in health and well-being, and I had to discover that for myself because it's not out there. That one needs meaningful relationships, meaningful work, meaningful hobbies, meaningful recreation. That when a person is leading a life with purpose, it promotes health. It feeds our inner doctors.
Mm-hmm.
And instead of being encouraged to find meaning and purpose, we're given TV.
Yeah, well then it seems as if a great many people, the vast majority of people, are probably in a kind of survival mode, because if you're malnourished on all these fundamental levels, then you'll engage in survival behavior. And perhaps one of the attributes of that survival behavior is to cling ever more deeply to the very illusions which it's necessary for you to reject, in a vain attempt to put off the fateful day when you're going to have to do the root and branch core re-examination of your entire worldview.
I couldn't have said it better myself. And when we're talking about this chronic stress state, you have to understand that serves the pharmaceutical industry. That serves the medical industries. Because when people are stressed, their body produces chemicals that are designed to help you fight and run away. But it precludes healing. In order for a person to heal, they have to be in what would be called rest and digest states. They have to be in states where the body is relaxed enough to put energy into digesting food and put energy into restoring and rebalancing. It doesn't bother when it's under the red flag of fight or run away, because healing and digestion are secondary. So the very system that was designed to protect us and ensure survival has been turned upside down. And now it's a threat to our well-being. Thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, well, maybe we'll get into that and some more stuff as well about therapeutics. You're on The Beautiful Truth with Fintan Dunne. I'm speaking with Michael Ellner, and we'll take a bit of music and we'll be right back. And you're very welcome back. This is The Beautiful Truth with Fintan Dunne, speaking with Michael Ellner. Michael, we're looking at something that's ingrained not only in ourselves but in the people all around us. So I think would be helpful to take a look at what kind of therapeutic approaches that you're adopting in hypnotic therapy. How is that applied, and what is the kind of benefit that people can get?
I have rejected the conventional practice of hypnotherapy and have developed my own approach and have been teaching and certifying people in that, because most conventional hypnotherapy is based on old Freudian models.
Mm-hmm.
And those models have been absolutely abandoned by psychiatrists and psychologists. But many hypnotists cling to them. So I'm using what I would call the quantum model. My model for helping people heal and change is that when a person changes their mind in a very dynamic and powerful way, it automatically changes their brain, physiology. It automatically creates the space to change their behavior. So creative ways to help people excite their imaginations and change their view, change their perspective, change the way they experience things. And it's a lot easier than it might sound.
Mm-hmm.
When somebody really looks at things in new ways, they become a new person. I would say that it even affects change in their DNA.
And the specific methodologies that are used, just in general outline, could you give me an idea of what they are?
Okay. I teach people basic and meditation can be viewed. The great Orman McGill, the Dean of American Hypnotists, said, hypnosis and meditation are two sides of the same coin. And if you look at a coin, the two sides can look very different, but it's the same coin. And then the other thing I teach people to do is focus their attention in ways that promotes health. Most people focus on problems. I help people focus on solutions. Most people focus on limitations. My goal is to help people focus on opportunities. People focus on what they don't have. I help them focus on what they do have. And that's really the underlying premise of the way I approach helping people with mind-body techniques. Mm-hmm. It's about helping people develop resources they already have in other areas of their life. And I find it's very effective.
A great part of that is breaking loose from a current mode of behavior, which is often humorless. And one phrase that you have used is seriosity killed the cat. No, not curiosity, but seriosity killed the cat. God, we're so serious all the time, Michael.
Curiosity killed the cat. But I think the biggest problem today in my clients is seriosity. Everything is so damn serious. Everything is so heavy. Everything is so painful. And when people learn to view those things in a lighthearted way, it changes their lives. I have made up a medical condition to mock depression. And instead of speaking to depression, I call it fun deficiency disorders. Because I've noticed everyone who's come to me and said, I've been labeled by an expert as depressed, suffers from a fun deficiency. They stopped learning how to have fun, and they stopped having fun. I think there's an ongoing process in life that you find new ways to enjoy it. You find new ways of generating pleasure and satisfaction just from being alive. And the average person is in that chronic stress. Everything is so heavy. Everything is so serious. And what I help people do is break out of that seriosity. And you know, when people have permission to have fun, they start having fun.
And of course, there's therapeutic benefit straight away from that. Besides the benefit of also helping to disconnect us from a particular worldview. That worldview, of course, Michael, is reinforced by the culture around us, which is bad news all day long. That's what the media does. It's just one permanent bad news all day long. Not that there isn't bad news.
I agree with you, and that is challenging because even somebody who escapes from, let's call this the insane zone, and someone breaks out, you're always in danger of being pushed back in by the society and culture we live in. Mm-hmm. So it takes a constant awareness. Whenever I feel this way, I'm back in that crazy zone, and I better get the heck out of here. And that's the only defense we have. When a person is in this unhealthy state of mind, everything feels serious. So whenever a person finds himself in this state of seriosity, the message is get the heck out of that room. Get the heck out of that space.
Yeah, well, space...
That has a therapeutic model, but you're absolutely right. We're constantly being pushed back into that mindset.
Yeah, I think another aspect of it is that none of us exist in a vacuum, and we have social networks. We may have a familial network around us, both in a marital family and in our parental family, which is the bedrock out of which we grew and in which this seriosity and overall approach to life is based. So if you're going to try and break free of that, you're going to have to create some personal space separate from the familial spaces around you in order to break free of it.
That is absolutely true. And I think that what happens is you begin to notice that people in groups become aware of this together and the group evolves. You know, if somebody improves in a situation, everybody notices it. It's called in NLP ecology. Now, in some situations, it's upsetting and disturbs the ecology. Someone's an alcoholic. You know what their role is in the family. Suddenly they turn things around and they become a gentleman. They become a plus instead of a minus in a situation. A whole dynamic changes. Mm-hmm. But sometimes people are waking up together. Families are waking up together. Groups of friends are waking up together. And that's where the hope lies. And I think the Internet really will play a key into how far this can grow, because this is the biggest threat to the status quo, the free exchange of information.
Yeah, well, that's certainly something that I've found in the forum where we discuss all these issues, is that we have a chance to create a new group which transcends the cultural and familial groups that we normally belong to. And what I do find is that within the groups that we normally belong to, here's this problem. The other individuals who we habituate with, that we hang out with, they expect us to behave in certain ways. And, you know, I find an awful lot of the time when I'm interacting with people who I know well, I'm almost predisposed to continue the kind of interaction I've always had with them because it will disturb them if I don't.
You know, this is very evident with people who test HIV positive. And if your listeners don't know, you should be aware that this is not proof that anyone is infected with anything. These tests have been profoundly discredited. Mm-hmm. However, when a person tests positive and believes, they are welcomed with a great passion. They are rewarded. They get all sorts of benefits. They are accepted. They might be isolated because they're gay. They might be isolated because they're a drug user. They might be isolated because they're a minority. But as soon as they join the HIV club, it's welcome to the party. Mm-hmm. But those people who are HIV positive and reject the model, in addition to all the built-in isolation, you know, when you test positive, you become a second-class citizen. You wonder if you'll ever have physical love again. You'll wonder, you know, if you'll ever have a meaningful relationship. The challenges are overwhelming. But if you're one of these remarkable, special people who says, I don't want to take the medicines, I don't want to count my T cells, I refuse to believe that I'm infected with a deadly virus and it's going to kill me, those people face the most intense, horrible isolation and alienation one can imagine. And some of them are strong enough to stand up to it, and these are the survivors, and others of them find it's easier to take the medicines. And watching somebody relent and take the medicines, for me, is heartbreaking.
Mm-hmm. This is one of the dangers of the support structures, as they're called.
And these groups are funded and directed by PR firms. And what happens is they deliver their victims to the pharmaceutical and medical industries like fish in a barrel. And this has become a major way of marketing diseases and marketing drugs today. It's not just HIV, it's almost anything. They create these groups of people who talk about, these medicines save me, we need more research, this is such a terrible problem, and it looks like this is a consumer grassroots effort, but it's actually a cold, calculated corporate ruse. And this is happening all over. Most support groups support getting sick and dying. They don't support wellness and health. They don't support healing. That's why I've stuck with HEAL all these years. There are a number of groups that are challenging the model, but we are the minority. By and large, most of these groups are destructive. And the reason I kept doing this, I've been doing this now for over 25 years, is there's a need. I keep thinking I'll wake up and somebody else will do it. But as long as there's a need, and I figure if you know about this, you have a responsibility to act on it.
Well, yeah, if you have been gifted or cursed with the ability to stand outside the group, perhaps from a very young age, then you have to put that at the service of the community.
There's a gift and a curse, you're right.
And, you know, if we look at, there's a lot of cult in this. This is why it's so dangerous, these support groups for HIV, for example, is that if your involvement in the group has this impact, that it significantly affects your disposable income to the point where your involvement in the cult is literally sucking all of the money which you have at your disposal into your involvement. That would certainly be the case in relation to the HIV issue, for example, because this is big money business, Michael.
It's huge. You know, we're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars when you begin to add it all up together. When you begin to add up the testing, the treatments, the prevention, the reporting, the organization, we could immediately change the social conditions of everyone, but we're wasting it on this imaginary war against people at risk. And that's what it is. We are waging a war against the people we're claiming to care about and protect. More people were killed by high-dose AZT, and today more people are being killed by AIDS treatment than any virus. And it's despicable.
Well, it's very interesting that with the abandonment of the claim that all heterosexuals were at risk, that we're now back to core groups who, as you say, just happen to turn out to be the ones most at risk for HIV are people who are minorities, and often despised minorities.
This is an attack on the disenfranchised of the world. What bothers me beyond what's happening in the West is in Africa. We're talking Africa, India, South America. We're talking 30, 50 million people. 50 million people, rough estimate, that aren't meeting their basic requirements of life. And we're calling it AIDS. That the social conditions have become so subhuman that these people are developing what looks like AIDS, and that they're able to present this to the world as this infectious, sexually transmitted disease that they deserve. If those Africans weren't so frisky sexually, well, they wouldn't have this problem, would they? Mm-hmm. And we ignore the fact that the evidence shows it's not sexually transmitted between anybody. This is a disease of toxicity. And one of the great causes of toxicity is malnourishment. Mm-hmm.
Well, one other morphing of that from the African continent is that it's now morphing back into the United States, where we're now told that African Americans are hugely at risk for HIV. Has anybody taken a look at the incarceration rates of African Americans, or at their general health status overall in comparison to other groups in the United States?
They would match, but no one's doing that. And you see, the victims are being led to the pharmaceutical ovens. My old associate Frank Banakis used to call this the pharmaceutical ovens to describe this as a medical holocaust, and I think he captured it perfectly, Frank Banakis, is that they're going to the black churches, they're going to the black organizations, and they're telling them, you have to do more to save your community. And they're giving them money, and they're giving them all kinds of guilt. And these organizations are now spreading the word. They've become HIV evangelists, so that the people the community trusts have been turned against them. And I show up and I say, like, with friends like these, you don't need enemies. But I'm viewed as the outsider and the enemy. So it's very challenging. You know, I was thinking about what you said about all the groups, and I just wanted to say, there are groups that are doing something special and wonderful. I think of Alive and Well and the courageous work of Christine Majori, for example. Mm-hmm. And there are other groups that are doing this as well, too. So, you know, there are terrible groups and then there are good groups. The thing is that for every good group, there are 200,000 bad groups. So we got a lot of work cut out for us.
Yeah. Well, and this is the challenge, I think, at this stage, that it's very hard to get people out of cult groups or cult thinking. And I think there's a lot of cult thinking going on in society. This is what we've been talking about. And the challenge for us is not how do we reach the more open-minded and already maybe partially disconnected from the cult thinking individuals, but how do we reach out beyond that group? How can we get to the people who have yet to deal with these rethinking issues?
I think what we need to do is to help them really, really examine what they actually feel and experience. And I think that within our actual experiences and what we feel, that there's this space to realize none of this matches what I'm told. Mm-hmm. None of this matches what I've believed for all these years. One of the things that I have noticed often is that a person in crisis has an advantage over other people in that when you're in crisis, when your world is crumbling, all the cultural hypnosis crumbles with it. And there's this window of opportunity to see things as they are, instead of as you were told they are.
So many of us have got an occupation that is consuming vast amounts of our time anyway, and other responsibilities. So you've got to set aside time when you're not zoned out in front of TV and when you're actually investing in yourself in order to help you break free from these collective trance states.
The way I'm looking to change the way people are programmed is to encourage people, and this again is about fighting the seriosity and the fun deficiency disorders. I think that if people took mini vacations numerous times a day, 5 minutes here, 3 minutes here, 2 minutes here, where they just rebalanced, where they just grounded themselves, where they just let everything slow down and fade away for a couple of minutes, and then went back to what they were doing, that doing this on a regular basis would help them wake up in a very, very gentle, powerful way.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that these mini vacations, where people start getting back in touch with being connected physically, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually, just letting everything fade away for a moment, and just being. We're human beings. We forget that. Being is important. And the quality of that being, if you do it 20 times a day for a couple of minutes here, a couple of minutes there, a couple of minutes here, it becomes habitual. And that's the habit we need to develop, in my opinion.
Yeah. You know, one of the problems as well, Michael, is that our brains are very complex structures and they think in verbal ways. But of course, verbs, words are symbols. And we're drowning in symbolic awareness as opposed to a holistic body-centered awareness at the moment. There's an expression which is used called a head case. Yeah, that's an individual whose primary concentration is in the head, lost in these symbols which the media are pumping us full of, and not connected to a fundamental holistic body reality, but instead to a mind, a world of symbols.
Your skill and ability as a healer is showing. Of course, yes, you're absolutely right. That's what I'm looking at these mini vacations, is reconnecting to this.
Mm-hmm.
You're absolutely right. We, instead of experiencing the world, we experience what we think about experiencing the world.
Right.
And that removes us from the richness of life. And this is a chronic problem you see everywhere. You're absolutely right. I'm not thinking about what's going on. I'm thinking about what I think about what's going on. And it just gets in the way of having real experience.
Yeah. Okay, well, we've touched on a lot of different aspects of this, scratching the surface, Michael, in many ways of these mental and social issues around the current state of affairs and around the issue of HIV and AIDS in particular. It's an area that we have to focus on, and it's a reflective view that we have to start taking of the whole dynamic in order to be really fully effective. I've done my railing, and I've done my scientific work, and you have too, challenging existing worldviews and existing views of HIV/AIDS on the science of it. But this is the other side of it. It's the mind side.
I would urge anyone who's listening to this, please take a moment and investigate it for yourself as if your life depended on it, because ultimately it does. This is not two guys having a conversation about something that doesn't matter. We're talking about something that affects us in every aspect of our lives. Please, take a look at this. Investigate this. Thank you.
Okay. It's great to have you on, Michael, and hopefully we can speak again.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks indeed, Michael, for joining us, and a great discussion.